When you've got America's sons and daughters out there in the dirt and the dust and the darkness doing the bidding of their country, we owe them the best that we can provide for them.
Making the assumption that fuel is going to be available whenever and wherever we need it is absolutely flawed. It will not be. We need to recognize that now.
Military operations in the air, at sea, or on the ground, in many ways are being driven by the limits of the range and performance of the vehicles and how they consume fuel.
In the military, the savings on the battlefield are in lives.
A dozen top-ranking military leaders, 2-, 3-, and 4-star admirals and generals recently retired from active service, know from personal experience that energy supply, logistics, and availability impact military mission. In their previous landmark report, leaders serving on CNA's Military Advisory Board found that climate change is a threat multiplier which can create instability and new missions for American forces.
You can debate the science of climate change, how fast, how far, how soon, but something's happening. Energy security, again, the same sort of metrics, how fast, how far, how soon. Do we run out of energy?
In a new year-long study, they examined the converging risks of climate security, energy security, and America's national security.
Climate, energy, together are those type of a crisis which we've described as creeping up on you. You don't see them until all of a sudden you fall off the cliff.
We've got to develop sources of energy that are sustainable and we have assured access to. Anything we do in assuring access to energy and the types of energy we use has to not make climate change worse.
In May 2009, the Military Advisory Board reported its findings to top policymakers and media in Washington. The board found that America's current energy posture constitutes a serious and urgent threat to our national security. The leaders warn this is a threat that can and will be exploited by those who wish to do us harm.
Energy security and national security are tied together and are being used by other people in the world, whether it's OPEC or the Russians or the Venezuelans.
We cannot produce enough oil to change this dynamic. We have to wean ourselves from it.
We cannot continue to consume 25% of the world's oil with only 3% of the oil reserves.
Our national security is very much tied up in our ability to get energy. We use an awful lot of it, more than anybody else on earth, and DOD uses it more in the military than any other single American institution.
The Military Advisory Board found America's national security planning processes have not been sufficiently responsive to the security impacts of our energy posture.
Our inefficient use of oil adds to the already great risks assumed by our troops. It reduces combat effectiveness. It puts our troops more directly and more often in harm's way. Ensuring the flow of oil around the world stretches our military thin, and these are the same men and women already fighting wars on two fronts.
We saw this in Iraq, and we are certainly seeing it in Afghanistan, where literally the pace of military operations, the size of the force, and the military effectiveness of that force is paced by our ability to get fuel.
Contact.
70% of the tonnage that goes to the battlefield is liquid. Much of that is fuel. And so to get a supply line formed up, take that stuff, and you have to take it every day. So it's a security issue on the battlefield.
To the extent that we can make a significant reduction in the amount of fuel that we have to deliver forward, we will make the convoys smaller, less frequent, and less of vulnerability, and also, quite frankly, less of cost.
This energy threat also impacts our economy. We're in the midst of a financial crisis, and our approach to energy is part of the problem.
With this latest economic crisis, we forget that it wasn't just this last summer that we're dealing with a fuel crisis, a significant fuel crisis. Now, prices have come down, but they're going to come back up.
A $20 change in a barrel of oil creates a huge budget problem for a military who uses liquid petroleum.
This price volatility is not limited to oil. Natural gas and coal prices also have huge spikes in the last year. While these resources may be plentiful, they are increasingly difficult to access and have associated impacts such as slurry spills. The economic and environmental costs are steep. There are those who say we cannot afford to deal with the energy issues right now. But if we don't address our long-term energy profile now, future crises will likely dwarf this one.
The Military Advisory Board found that energy, climate change, and national security are inextricably linked.
Energy security and a sound response to climate change cannot be achieved by pursuing more fossil fuels. They require diversification of energy sources.
The Military Board found that the fragile state of America's domestic electric grid is a serious threat to our national security.
We are very dependent on the electric grid in the United States, and it is a very fragile grid. And so if a terrorist attack was made on the electric grid, it would have huge impacts on critical installations of the military all around the country.
Domestic terrorists like attacked the Murrah building in Oklahoma City, or foreign terrorists that like attacked us on 9/11, can cause a tremendous amount of damage. But quite frankly, mechanical failures and natural disasters cause the overwhelming amount of the problems that we have.
A business-as-usual approach to energy security poses an unacceptably high threat level from a series of converging risks. The Military Advisory Board finds achieving energy security in a carbon-constrained world is possible, but will require concerted leadership and continuous focus. They urge that energy and climate change goals should be clearly integrated into national security and military planning processes. And the board finds that the Department of Defense can contribute to national solutions as a technological innovator, early adopter, and testbed.
It's clear this country has to transform the way it uses energy and the way it develops energy, and we have to look at energy dependence and national security as an interleaved process.
To the extent that the military can come up with solutions that work for the military, they can be transmitted into the commercial world. To the extent that the commercial world comes up with solutions, it can flow back to the military. But we're all in this together.
It's not simple. It's not easy, and it takes technology, but it also takes public knowledge about energy use and how important it is to us to resolve it.
There's almost a trauma in America right now, and so we've got to get over that and have people say, listen, this is not going to take care of itself without me being a part of it.
Our only choice is whether we're going to make the decisions forcefully and in a timely manner. We could lag, and then we'll find ourselves in a much more serious situation when all of these other costs come on us.
This is America. We're pretty good at getting stuff done. We need to get this one done.